It's with heavy hearts. We learned about the passing of John Horgan this morning. John was a remarkable man, both in the history of this province and just who he was as a person. His legacy for British Columbia is profound. In terms of law, he was the premier who brought in the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, among countless other legislative accomplishments. Politically, for the NDP, he brought us from 16 years in opposition in the political wilderness into the government benches for the first time in a generation. And I think for many British Columbians, he made them think differently about politics and about politicians. He was accessible, he was fun and funny, and he was called Premier Dad, and rightly so. For myself, he was a coach and a mentor. He was an inspiration to me. He had advice when I needed it. He conducted himself with the utmost in integrity, and he brought a spirit of fun to his work that was infectious. And many of you will remember too, he had a bit of a temper from time to time. And if you hadn't been yelled at by John Horgan, then you hadn't truly worked with him. I truly love John Horgan. Personally, he was a private guy. We all knew of his profound love for Ellie at 45 years together. He spoke so affectionately of her, and their love was very present. And their two sons, Nate and Evan, were his pride and joy. Family was a huge priority for John. The Horgan family shared John with British Columbia, and now with his passing, we all grieve along with the Horgan family. I know I felt like one of John's relatives. I think everyone who worked with him felt that closeness of family, and yet we weren't family. Their grief is profound, and our hearts go out to them. In terms of the legislature, the flag will be at half-mast to commemorate John's passing. The relevant government officials will work with the Horgan family to provide members of the public an opportunity to offer their condolences here at the legislature, and with a formal service to recognize his contributions to British Columbia and to British Columbians as he worked to make their lives better every single day he served in this place. Thank you.
You spent a lot of time with him. Other than him yelling at you, are there any moments and stories that stand out in your mind?
I think for me, for John, the piece that I looked at in awe about was his ability to turn what was a clear political liability moment into a political asset. So I remember the story that he told many times. I'm sure you heard him tell the story about knocking over the water glass in the meeting with the Prime Minister, and then turning that into, the discussion was about pipelines, and saying, well, this is how easily spills can happen. When he was, there was an issue about freedom of information on phones. And he said, and he just pulled his phone out of his pocket and unlocked it and offered to pass it around to the press gallery so they could all have a look at what was on his phone, what apps he had installed. There was a word game that he particularly liked. He was in the legislature and he lost his temper briefly with the leader of the opposition, and he used an unfortunate turn of phrase that was unparliamentary. And he turned it into a moment where all British Columbians could relate with just losing their cool and using what we call at our house rough language. He had the ability to take those moments where it was a tough moment or it was just maybe a little embarrassing and make people just love him more. And for me, that really encapsulates who he was. Thanks, everybody.